Chapter 25. Previously, there were people who suspected that the burglars from the residential area were part of a gang. Even though Jing Tan was not that good at analyzing cases, she knew that to steal from the residential area, there was a high chance that there was an inside job. However, when the police came, they couldn't find anything. In the end, the case was left unsettled. Therefore, during that period of time, the owners who rented out their houses were forced to come back to the residential area to explain to the other residents. They even had to sign an agreement to ensure that the tenants trusted them enough. Jing Tan heard a ding sound. It was the sound of the building's security guard. These two people had access cards and they were familiar enough with the residents of this building. Their target should not be the old residents of the few retired old employees. In fact, many of the retired teachers living here lived a very poor life. Even if they were actually very rich, when they went to the school cafeteria, they would buy a large bag of white steamed buns and cook some porridge and side dishes at home. They did not live a life of luxury. Besides, if the target was the family of those retired teachers, why wait until now? Therefore, excluding the old residents, the relatively new residents were the two families on the 5th floor. Coincidentally, why did they choose today when Jiao Ma was in trouble and Jiao Pa wasn't home? Only two children who were still in elementary school were left. They weren't much of a threat and didn't have the ability to fight back. After one of them entered the building, Jing Tan estimated the time and went to the door from the balcony. He looked at the clock on the wall. It was 10 minutes past 2. Generally speaking, people were sleeping soundly at this time. If their target wasn't the Jiao family, Jing Tan wouldn't do anything for the time being. He didn't want to wake up the two children who had just fallen asleep. To be honest, Jing Tan didn't care about what happened to the others. People were biased. What did it have to do with him if someone else's house was stolen? These people were only stealing, not murdering people. Of course, even if he did make a move, he would wait until they were ready to leave. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Jing Tan didn't want to make a scene in front of his house. However, things didn't go as planned. The man paused when he reached the 5th floor. He seemed to be making sure that all the residents on the 5th floor were asleep. Then he walked towards the Jiao family. Soon there was a soft sound from the door lock. Hearing the light footsteps outside the door, Jing Tan's ears twitched, and the claws on its palms stretched out. The person on the other side of the door would never have thought that 1 meter away from the door, a black cat was sitting at the dark entrance. With the sound of footsteps approaching and the sound of the door lock, the black cat had already changed its posture. It bent its legs and crouched down. The tip of its tail, which had been wagging from time to time, stopped moving. It was ready to strike. The door gradually opened after a light click sound. An unfamiliar aura. The person at the door carefully pushed open the door, but just as he pushed it open a little before he could even step in, he suddenly felt a sharp pain on his face. From the tip of his left eyebrow to the right corner of his mouth, a few bloody marks immediately appeared on his face, each of which immediately oozed blood. Before the man could react to the sudden pain, a strong force hit his chest, causing him to take 2 steps back and fall to the ground. The lights in the corridor were all turned off, and the small flashlight in the man's hand fell to the ground due to the impact. The man panicked, thinking that he had been discovered. What he knew was not true. It was obvious that there were more than 2 children in the house. The man screamed because of the sharp pain on his face. He got up and ran downstairs, but the small amount of light from the flashlight was not enough for him to see the stairs clearly. Blood had already flowed into his eyes, blurring his vision. The pain on his face stimulated the nerves in his brain, and he staggered and rolled down the stairs. When he reached the corner of the stairs, he hurriedly got up and ran down again. Jing Tan closed the door and chased after the man. Since the man had already come all the way here, Jing Tan would not be satisfied if he didn't get rid of him once and for all. The man should be very familiar with the stairs of the residential building. Otherwise, how could he run so fast in the dark and hurt his eyes? When he reached the 1st floor, there was a person lying in front of the door. It was a woman. De Pang's owner, the old lady who was almost 70 years old, was standing there with a stun baton. De Pang squatted by the old lady's feet. De Pang's warning was not for Jing Tan but for the old lady. The old lady was very sensitive to the sound of wooden signs, so she made the wind chime sound like a wooden sign. Although the old lady was old, she was not careless at all when she made a move. Otherwise, the young woman would not have been lying there without a sound. The young woman's accomplice had no intention of helping his companion at this time, and directly rushed out. The old lady had already caught one, so she did not stop the man. After all, she was old and could not compare to a strong young man. If she forced herself to fight, she would definitely be at a disadvantage. Therefore, the old lady shouted forcefully, "Catch the thief!" Then in the courtyard the dogs began to bark, mixed with a few cat meows that Jing Tan was familiar with. Jing Tan chased after the man. Although the man's face was injured and one of his eyes was blurred by blood, he still ran very fast. Behind Jing Tan, a white figure was also rushing towards this side. Although it was not as fast as Jing Tan, it was indeed following Jing Tan's pursuit route, running in the direction that the man escaped. The man ran fast, but Jing Tan was not slow either. All the training he had been doing was not for nothing. Jing Tan ran while thinking about the best time to make a move. When the man passed by the flower bed at the corner, Jing Tan sped up, rushed up, jumped up and pushed the man from behind. The man did not expect to be hit in the back. He lost his balance, his legs went limp and he fell on the flower bed. His head rested on the cement edge of the flower bed. For a moment the man was a little dizzy. He lay there and moved twice but did not get up. Not long after, when the man gradually came back to his senses, a white figure rushed over and bit the man's calf. Blood came out from the bite. Ah! It was another scream, different from the one in front of the Zhou family's house. After the panic of being discovered, being chased and running away, the sharp pain in his calf made him want to vent his fear. Therefore the scream was especially loud, which was very scary in such a night. The man struggled to break free and kicked the bull. Niu Zhuangzhuang, who had been kicked and rolled a few times, got up and continued to rush forward. This time he was even more ferocious. He took another bite of the blood mark that he had just bitten and made a low growl as he bit. Jing Tan squatted in the bushes nearby, watching the performance of the 4-month-old bull terrier. He praised in his heart, "Bull Zhuangzhuang, damn it." Although it looked a little weird, he had to admit that the bull terrier was worthy of being a fighting dog. Jing Tan felt pain in his calf from the bite just now, not to mention the man's calf, which was badly mutilated after 2 bites. Jing Tan hid in the bushes because he sensed that the old lady's roar had attracted people to come over. At this time he did not want to expose himself. The claw marks on the man's face were enough. He would leave the rest of the credit to Bull Zhuangzhuang. After all, no one saw him when he chased after the man. Jing Tan looked up at Block B. He saw that the Zhou family's house lights were on. All the houses in that building had their lights on. People were shouting, dogs were barking and cats were joining in. It was so lively that even people who were sleeping soundly would be awakened. Jing Tan did not care about the people here and hurried over to the Zhou family. The 2 children were probably frightened. When Jing Tan returned to the house, the door was still closed like when Jing Tan left, but the lights in the living room were on. Jing Tan could still hear the Jiao Yuan whispering to Gu Yuzi in the living room. Jing Tan barked twice and scratched the door gently. The door immediately opened. The Jiao Yuan was holding a rolling pin and Gu Yuzi was standing behind him. Jing Tan, who taught these children to use rolling pins when they were in trouble? Xianxia was like this last time, and this time the Jiao Yuan had the same reaction. After seeing Jing Tan at the door, the 2 children relaxed a little. At this time Zhou Xian, who was opposite the door, walked out in his SpongeBob SquarePants pajamas. He looked confused. Because of this matter, many people in the family compound couldn't sleep until dawn. Those 2 people were arrested, and the people who had their things stolen last time were clamoring to interrogate them on the spot and investigate to the end. They were not easy to fool. Obviously, based on what they learned from interrogating the 2 men, the situation was not as simple as it seemed. No ordinary student could know so much about the people in the courtyard. The Jiao Yuan and Gu Yuzi followed Zhou Xian downstairs to understand the situation. After all, there were still bloodstains on the 5th floor corridor. They would not feel at ease if they did not figure it out. Hearing that the 2 men's target was the Jiao family, Aunt Ling, who had come out to chase her cat, slapped her twice. As for the young woman who was caught, the men in the courtyard didn't dare to make a move. Moreover, the young woman's face was covered in tears and she looked very pitiful. She was also quite pretty, looked obedient and spoke softly. Normally no one would think that she was a thief. After being slapped twice, the woman cried even harder, but she still looked pitiful. Unfortunately, Auntie Ling didn't fall for it. She went up and slapped her twice more. If it wasn't for the people beside her pulling her away, Auntie Ling would have kicked her twice. Jing Tan followed the Jiao Yuan downstairs. He did not join the crowd. At this time the two children were being watched by Aunt Ling and Zhou Xian, so nothing would happen. Xingtan looked at Niu Zhuangzhuang. The little guy was squatting beside Old Man Yen. Old Man Yen was smiling like a chrysanthemum flower. He praised it while wiping the blood from its mouth. Zhuangzhuang, you're really good. Tomorrow, no, today I'll buy you a big bone to reward you. Niu Zhuangzhuang barked twice. No one knew if it understood, but its tail was wagging happily. Ever since Niu Zhuangzhuang was brought to the courtyard, it had been sleeping in the corridor of Old Man Yan's building. That building had been robbed before, so everyone was thinking of letting Niu Zhuangzhuang guard the building. After the old lady shouted, someone immediately came out to check on the situation. It was at that time that Niu Zhuangzhuang rushed out. At night, Aunt Ling and the others did not inform the Jiaopa. He had to stay in the hospital. It was not until dawn that the Jiaopa found out about the courtyard. He specially allowed the Jiao Yuan and Gu Yuzi to not go to school. He called the teacher to ask for leave. The two children were brought to the hospital by Zhou Xian, who rarely went out. Zhou Xian had a car, so Xingtan did not need to stay in his bag to take the bus. However, when he came out of the hospital parking lot, he was still put in his bag.